Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're specifically going to be taking a look at the RCP or Real Clear Politics polling averages for every important swing or battleground state in the 2024 presidential election between Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. But before we get started with the map, make sure you guys are subscribed as we're approaching 4,000. Click the bell so you don't miss out on my content. Press like button, share this video. If you are interested, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. Now back to the topic of today's video. I'm going to be filling out this electoral map based off of the latest polling averages on RCP. Let's start off with the West Coast and make our way up to the northeastern states, starting off with Nevada. And as of right now, according to the RCP average, Kamala Harris has now taken the lead, in which Trump previously had it. And now she's up by 0.6%, a tilt margin under a percentage point in the state of Nevada. Now this is surprising because if you take a look at trends and demographics, Nevada is supposed to be a right-leaning trendy state. But all of a sudden, Kamala Harris is winning this by a tilt margin according to the RCP polling averages. And as of right now, you take a look at the previous polls, all of them are coming in from the month of August. Insider Advantage has Donald Trump actually up by 1%. But the thing that's really swaying this is the Bloomberg and Morning Consult poll, which has Harris up by 4 percentage points in the state of Nevada. If that poll never existed, if you remove Bloomberg and Morning Consult from this polling average, Donald Trump would actually have the lead in the state of Nevada. That's pretty much the outlier that's really swaying this. So realistically, Trump is actually winning Nevada when you do take away the Bloomberg and Morning Consult poll, because it typically overestimates Democrats in terms of sample. And also, the sample size is extremely small at just 450 registered voters. So in my opinion, this poll really should not be taken into consideration at all. But then you have the Fox poll, in which there's 1,026 registered voters. Harris is up by 2% in this Fox poll. That is not good news for Donald Trump. And CNN has Harris up by 1, which is actually less of a margin than Fox News. So that is not good news for Donald Trump. But then you take a look at the New York Times and CNN, which Donald Trump is up by 1 percentage point, as you can see at the very bottom. So it really varies and depends on what you're taking a look at. Now, I go back to Bloomberg. If you remove that poll, Trump is actually up. But I do think that's an outlier, but we have to include it. So Harris is up by 0.6% in this state. And now we move on to the next state of Arizona, in which, as of right now, on average, Donald Trump is defeating Kamala Harris by exactly 1 percentage point in the Sunbelt state of Arizona. Obviously, this is a must-win for him, and if he were to win the state, he would probably have to do slightly better in Maricopa County. Biden won Maricopa by 2 percentage points, and he doesn't necessarily have to win that county. And for example, Harris can still win Maricopa by like 1 point and still wind up losing this state entirely. And we take a look at the polls one by one here, break them down. Insider Advantage has Donald Trump by 1% in this state. CNN has Trump up by 5 points, guys, in the state of Arizona. Not good news for Kamala Harris. And surprisingly, Fox is actually showing their left-leaning bias, which is actually Harris is up by 1%. And you take a look at, you compare Fox and CNN, guys. CNN has Trump up by 5, but apparently Fox has Harris up by 1, and that just really does not make any sense. But yes, on average, Trump is winning Arizona by a tilt margin, which is the exact opposite in Nevada, in which Kamala Harris is up by 0.6, mainly because of that outlier poll, Bloomberg and Morning Consult, which typically heavily overestimates Democrats, and that sample size was just extremely small. But we go back to Arizona. Trump would have to do, better with the neocons, the establishment, the rhinos, especially the McCain-style voters. A lot of them broke for Biden in 2020 because he was seen more as a moderate candidate. And Kamala Harris does not really have that trait or characteristic as someone who is moderate. She's just not. I think a lot of them can go back and support Donald Trump this time around. Also, the former governor, Doug Ducey, I believe, endorsed Donald Trump as well. And last time he won by double digits. So maybe that endorsement can sway things. Also, the border crisis, that's a losing issue for Kamala Harris. She can't address immigration whatsoever. So that really makes sense why Trump is up on average in RCP in the state of Arizona. Also, he would have to do better among independents and, undecideds on election day as well. And then as for Texas, Trump is up by 7.3 percentage points, a likely margin on the RCP average. The latest poll from 4 days ago, the Hill and Emerson College has Donald Trump up by 4 percentage points, slightly closer and more competitive by a lean margin. But the thing that's really swaying this in favor of Donald Trump is the University of Houston at the very bottom, which was conducted in January, which is extremely a long time ago, which is why I don't think we should take this for consideration. I think the only two polls that matters here is pretty much the Hill and the University of Texas, with 1,200 registered voters, which Trump is actually up by 5 percentage points. So on average, he's going to be winning the state by a lean to likely margin. I'll feel that as likely for now. This state's another border state. That is a losing issue for Kamala. I think that really can go to Donald Trump's benefit. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think this state can get competitive at all whatsoever. And then as for Florida, Donald Trump is up by 6 percentage points in this state, slightly less than Texas by a likely margin. Still not going to be competitive whatsoever. Now, if you take a look at 538, it really depends what you're taking a look at. Right now, we're using RCP, but you compare RCP to 538, in which on 538, Trump is only up by 4 points in the state of Florida. And that's roughly 2%, less of a margin for him compared to RCP, which is what we're using in this video. So you can compare and contrast, in which Kamala is doing better in 530 than what she's doing on RCP. So yes, Real Clear Politics does favor Donald Trump slightly more, and it does not mean they're less accurate. In fact, they probably are more accurate than something like 538, which is why I'm using RCP for this video. The latest poll conducted from September this month, September 3 to the 5th, in which Kamala Harris is trailing Donald Trump by 5 points from the Hill and Emerson. And by the way, Trump is probably going to do tremendous in Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County flipped from blue to red to DeSantis in the midterms. He and Marco Rubio both got double digits in the state. He nearly got 20 points. Rubio got around 13. So it wouldn't shock me if Trump got close to 10 percentage points. I think the polls are severely underestimating him. I do expect him to perform better among Hispanic voters, specifically, especially with Cuban Americans as well. And then as for Georgia, which this is a must flip for the former president, he has to win this state. RCP officially, for the first time, has Kamala Harris in the advantage point by the narrowest of narrow margins, 0.1%, a tilt margin. This is around the same margin Biden had won this state by just 4 years ago. Biden had a lot of momentum going into this. He got a lot of high turnout in the Atlanta metropolitan area, the suburbs especially. I think the entirety of this election really comes down to the suburbs with, African American voter turnout. I don't expect the same for Kamala Harris. I do think Trump would narrowly win the state in my own prediction by probably under percentage point. But as of right now, it's basically a toss-up. But they do have Kamala up by 0.1 percentage points. And this is not good news for Donald Trump. She's barely going to take the state's 16 electoral votes. And then as for North Carolina, which, by the way, they are delaying early voting because of RFK. You can take a look at that drama yourselves. But Donald Trump is up by 0.7 percentage points on the RCP averages. A tilt margin very narrow in the state of North Carolina. By the way, this margin is less than his 2020 margin in this state. So according to RCP, Harris is going to perform better than Joe Biden in the state of North Carolina, which is exactly why I don't believe the polls, because I do think that Biden is better in North Carolina than someone like Harris, because Trump had won the state by 1.6% in 2020, but now he's only winning it by 0.7 against Vice President Harris. That really just does not add up. But yes, he still is taking the state of North Carolina by a narrow margin. And now let's move on to the state of Virginia, in which as of right now, Kamala Harris on average, according to RCP, is up by 4 percentage points. That's going to be considered a lean margin. We don't have too much data out of the state, but from what we can take a look at, only 2 polls, the New York Times, Siena, and that one other poll in which she's up by 5 and 3, you average that out, it comes out to 4 percentage points. And now, this may seem low, but believe it or not, this is a major improvement from Joe Biden. Because you take a look at RCP when Biden was in the race, Donald Trump, believe it or not, was winning the state of Virginia by 0.4% at the very last moment before Biden had dropped out. So that's, roughly a 4% shift to the Democrats, to Kamala Harris, which is an improvement. And one thing to keep in mind is that Glenn Youngkin is trying to mandate paper ballot voting only on election day. That means the state would be, called faster, I believe, and also really go to Donald Trump's benefit. And speaking of mandating paper ballots, in Georgia, I believe Brian Kemp, who also endorsed Donald Trump, by the way, just like Glenn Youngkin, is trying to, pass election day laws in which all absentee ballots have to be submitted by 8 p.m. and they won't be accepted any later. That means the state would be called faster, and that would really go to Donald Trump's benefit, ultimately at the end of the day. And now we move on to some of these Rust Belt states, starting off with Minnesota, in which, as we're speaking about Minnesota, obviously Tim Walz is the governor here. Obviously, you have that home state advantage for the VP, which would help Kamala Harris electorally. So I do think, me personally, she's going to win the state by a likely margin of around 8 percentage points. RCP has it closer than what I have it at 5.5 percentage points for Kamala Harris. The one from Fox News has her up by 6 with 1,071 registered voters. And then Survey USA has her up by 5. And honestly, I think that's too small of a margin for her. I think she's going to win by more. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's like a lean to likely margin. I'll leave it as likely for right now. Obviously, Minneapolis, the suburbs here are trending towards the left. And also, the women vote can really turn out significantly for Kamala Harris. And like I just mentioned earlier, obviously, Tim Walz is the governor here. That's a home state advantage for that ticket for the Democrats. I do think that would really boost her turnout in there. And then as for Wisconsin, on average, Kamala Harris is up by 1.4 percentage points according to RCP. The latest poll from Trafalgar, with 1,083 likely voters, has Trump up by 1 percentage point. Now, the thing that's really swaying this, just like the poll from Nevada that we just take a look at in the beginning of the video, Bloomberg and Morning Consult, a very left Democratic bias-leaning pollster, significantly oversample sizes Democrats with the sample size is pretty small, 701 registered voters. She is up by 8 percentage points. Just like the same thing for Nevada, if you remove that poll, Donald Trump realistically has the advantage in the state of Wisconsin, which is why I believe polls are bad, because you have weird outliers in which the majority of polls has Trump winning, but then you have one poll in which the sample size overwhelmingly it goes in favor of the Democrats, and that's what really sways the poll and makes it not accurate, and that's what people really need to understand. So realistically, Trump is winning in Wisconsin, which is, I do have him winning this state, but, Bloomberg and Morning Consult is really swaying this, and that's why she's up by 1.4%, but for the sake of this video, according to the average, she is going to win this state very narrowly. And, it really comes down to those 20,000 voters that Biden had ultimately won this by a margin of 0.6%, which, by the way, Trump in 2016 won this state by more of a margin than Biden did in 2020. And I do believe this state's actually shifting towards the right. It would not make sense if a state like Wisconsin voted to the left of Pennsylvania, which is literally what the polls in 538 is suggesting, which is why I don't trust 538 as well. Because typically you would see Pennsylvania vote to the left of Wisconsin, but according to the polls in 538, that's not going to happen. Wisconsin is going to be more blue than Pennsylvania in 2024, according to 538, which is just completely outrageous to me. Honestly, the main reason why Biden won this state was because of Milwaukee. If she doesn't get high turnout in Milwaukee, then she's probably not going to win this state. And if Trump is able to flip Door County, which only went to Biden by like a narrow margin, then Trump's probably going to win Wisconsin in 2024. Keep in mind, it was the reddest Rust Belt state of the three in 2020, 2016, and I believe the Obama era as well. Wisconsin voted to the right of both Michigan and Pennsylvania, so not be surprised if Trump were to flip this state. And then you have Michigan, in which she's winning the state on RCP averages by less of a margin than she is in Wisconsin. This makes absolutely no sense to me. Michigan was the bluest Rust Belt state in 2020, and apparently it's going to be more red than Wisconsin according to the polls on RCP. That makes absolutely no sense. Now, possibly it can because of the large uncommitted vote. Obviously, 100,000 voters voted uncommitted in the Democratic primaries. Now, that was against Joe Biden, not Kamala Harris. And also, the Detroit suburbs are really trending towards the left in the state. Also, I think the women vote can really turn out high for Kamala Harris. But yes, she's up by around 1 percentage point in this state. Obviously, Trafalgar, with a large sample size, 1,081 likely voters, has a dead tie at 47 to 47%. You have the Hill, Emerson, she's up by 3. Donald Trump's really not leading anywhere in the state besides one poll, and that poll's kind of trash. So realistically, I do think Harris is going to win Michigan in 2024. It's going to be very narrowly by probably a tilt margin of somewhere in between 0 to 1 percentage points. And then as for Pennsylvania, you would find that it is a dead tie on the Real Clear Politics polling averages at 47.2 to 47.2 percentage points. I do believe that Trump will be able to flip the state on election day or election week, whatever it is, I don't really care. With 1,082 likely voters, according to Trafalgar, Trump's up by 2 percentage points in this state. According to the Hill and Emerson, typically over sample size Democrats, it's a tie at 48%. These are not good numbers for Harris, and this state, as we all know, is called the tipping point state, or the deciding factor, which is going to determine who wins this election, surpassing 270 electoral votes. Right now, Donald Trump is probably in the advantage point. According to CNN, you guys, it's a tie. And the thing that's really swaying this is that one Bloomberg Morning Consult poll, just like in Nevada, and that one other state as well, of Wisconsin, I believe, and she's up by 4 percentage points. That's greater of a margin than Joe Biden. And Bloomberg Morning Consult is one of the worst pollsters, in my opinion. Now, realistically, Trump has the advantage in all three of those states, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, in which they have Bloomberg in that sample size. And, that's not really good. But the fact that they have this one outlier poll, which Kamala's up by 4, and it's a tie, realistically, Trump's going to win Pennsylvania by at least a couple percentage points in 2024. So, yes, he's going to win it by a tilt margin of under a percentage point. And honestly, if this were to happen, he would probably have to flip Erie County, which in the Republican primaries, Nikki Haley got a lot of that vote share. But despite that, she, did indeed endorse Donald Trump. And also, Central County only went to Biden by 4 to 5 percentage points. Donald Trump doesn't necessarily have to win it, but if he can get, somewhere, similar to his 2016 margin in this state, in Central County, I think he can possibly win this state. And obviously, Northampton County only went to Biden by 0.7. I do expect Trump to flip Northampton County. And also, he did get shot in this state, in Butler County, which is next to Pittsburgh. So if he does have, skyrocket turnout in some of these stronghold Democratic counties, like Pittsburgh, and Philadelphia as well, or if Kamala Harris does not have a performance in par or in line with Joe Biden's 2020 margin of victory in the state, she's very well at risk of losing the state. And according to all the metrics, all the polls from not only RCP but 530 as well, Pennsylvania is the closest Rust Belt state, and Kamala Harris is in jeopardy of actually losing this state. And the last and final state before we end off this video is going to be New Hampshire, which according to the RCP averages, she's up by a margin of exactly 5 percentage points. You can argue it's likely, but I'll fill it in as lean for right now. I do think on election day she would probably win this state by 6 points if I had to make an estimated margin guess. Probably because this state has a lot of college-educated voters, and I think Tim Walz, he really, he specializes in education. As governor, he really focuses on education, and I think that can really help Kamala Harris in the state of New Hampshire. So there you guys go. According to the RCP averages as of today in the month of September, this is a really close election. Kamala Harris gets 273 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 265. We have some really weird states. Like, at the same time, Georgia goes for Harris, but Pennsylvania goes for Trump. I mean, it really makes no sense. So this is not my map. This is according to RCP polling averages. Let me know what states you agree with or disagree with in the comment section down below. One last final reminder to subscribe as we're approaching 4,000. Click the bell so you don't miss out on my content. Press the like button, share this video. Also, if you're interested, we have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching.